All right, so we're going to continue the program with the next session and workshop, which is about the question how big data will or might disrupt business or business to business. And we're going to look at that from an industry perspective, from a startup perspective, and bringing different backgrounds and experiences to the table. You see the panel already over here. I'm going to introduce them step by step. We'll have a first kind of short note from everyone, just sharing thoughts and perspective with you. And then we'll have a discussion on topics of questions. Every one of you, please, feel free, if you have questions, step in and raise them. We're happy to get an interactive session over here. We're going to start with the first speaker, which is Inga Bergen. And I want to just shortly introduce Inga to the ones of you who don't know her. She's a digital innovation and digital health expert. I think that's sort of the description with a broad range of experiences. Currently, she acts as a CEO of a cancer diagnostic and dermatech startup, Magnosco, which I learned has just started to bring out their technology to physicians in the real market space. Before joining Magnosco, she was the CEO of the digital health company Welldo, which I think has become quite prominent and popular. Inga has many years of experiences, 12 years in building digital business models and companies, saw a broad range of different perspectives. And we are now looking forward to your talk at the start, which is about examples on how data analytics can revolutionize medical diagnostic, and I also learned there will be some philosophical aspects to your talk, right? So Inga, first stage is yours. Looking forward to your talk.
Okay. Can I get your microphone?
Absolutely. Can I take your seat?
Yeah, you can take my seat. So hello, everybody. Well, I wanted to introduce myself first, but you already did that. So, well, I was thinking because the name of the session is the disruption, and I myself work since 12 years in disrupting business models. So basically, disruption is kind of my profession, and I brought 5 assumptions on what I think about big data and data analytics and how they will basically change diagnostics and healthcare overall. Yeah, I would like to excuse myself first because the examples I have are not, all of them are not big data. Some of them are even small data. And well, the problem is that the cases with big data are not that many at the moment because gathering data is so complex. So, welcome. My first assumption is that big data will fundamentally change the interaction between physicians and patients, because patients now start to diagnose themselves and they start to treat themselves. And they have done that since, well, books and the internet is there. But I'm pretty sure all of you follow the news. So who knows Ada Health? Everybody. So you should know Ada Health. It's a Berlin and London-based startup. And just 2 weeks ago, they closed their A series in 47 million euros funding. And it's an app, the Ada Health app. You can download it. It's free. And it has 1.5 million users based on now small data and AI, so algorithms. And users can diagnose themselves with Ada Health. And Ada has the potential to become the Alexa or Google of health. And when you think of a general practitioner at the moment, about 20 diseases are responsible for 80% of the doctor visits. So we can, well, expect that big data and analytics will really change the interaction and will disrupt the business model of physicians fundamentally. And this leads me to my second point, where big data and analytics can help, and this is rare diseases and orphan diseases. If you think of patients now with a rare disease, they run from doctor to doctor over years probably before somebody can help them diagnosing what they have. And we already know that physicians' decisions based on data and based on algorithms are more precise, and well, no human being can stay up to date on all the knowledge and all the research that is published every day. So I believe that this field will be disrupted very much by big data solutions. And the third point, I think you already heard about that yesterday, I want to make is that big data will disrupt and fundamentally change and hopefully enable us to prevent, to diagnose and to even cure the most mysterious disease on the planet, and that is cancer. So cancer is a highly complex disease, so we all know that one tumor can develop 100 million cells, and then each of these cells can mutate individually. And what we see now, there is no answer to that at the moment, but there are lots of scientists, and I think we saw that yesterday, who are building up the databases and the fundamentals that will enable us. And what I find particularly interesting is Oliver Elemento's lab at the Englander Institute of Precision Medicine, and he's building the ID card for cancer that will enable precision medicine in the future. And this is also one thing I deal with at Magnosco, because we early detect skin cancer and we use data and algorithms to avoid biopsies. And cancer is one of the fastest growing businesses for all big pharmas. And it's also one of the cash cows. So if there will be disruption, it will be big. So we don't know now what it will be, but we can expect that. And the fourth point is, I believe that big data will definitely shift our healthcare system from treatment of diseases to prevention of diseases. And this is particularly interesting for all chronic diseases, such as diabetes or cardiovascular diseases, and we will move to outcome-based reimbursement. And this is, I think this has been a topic for years, and this is, of course, data and algorithm-driven, because if, as we see now, the quantified self movement, the wearables, the sensors within our smartphones, the home laboratory trend. I have a few friends who are biohackers, so I stay up to date, and you can basically test everything at home already. And this will become cheaper and cheaper, and this development will lead us to more preventive care and then also to a shift to outcome-based reimbursement. And the fifth point, and this is the philosophical part, is that big data is expected to disrupt the human being itself. So this is what everybody believes in the Silicon Valley and at the Singularity University and at Google and so on and so on. Well, who of you knows CRISPR? Anybody heard of CRISPR? Okay, wow, this is a well-educated audience. So yeah, for those who don't know about CRISPR, it's a very cheap and easy technique for making precise changes on your DNA. And just last month, I think a guy named Yoshia Sainer, a former NASA employee who's a biochemist, basically changed his own DNA and injected it and live streamed that on Facebook. What these people believe is that we can basically change ourselves with the help of big data and data analytics. And so who of you knows Yuval Noah Harari? Anybody? Oh, cool. Finally, only a few people. So I really recommend you to read his books. Yuval Noah Harari is a young historian from Jerusalem, and he wrote a book called Homo Deus. And his perspective is that we ourselves as Homo sapiens will replace us with artificial life, the Homo Deus, that will be the next life form that we create. And this life form will be basically enabled by big data and data analytics. But he also points out in his other book called Sapiens, and it's about the history of humankind, that in the first industrial evolution, we thought that the human body would work like a steam machine. So that we ourselves consist of mechanical parts, and that each of these mechanical parts can be repaired. And this is pretty much our healthcare system right now. And this is how we learn medical stuff at the moment. And we all know that it doesn't work perfectly. And so I would like to give you one food for thought. So if we think that the human body is big data now, and that we can solve all these problems that we have in health and in the healthcare system with data and data analytics, will this be our final savior? And yeah, let's stay critical on this. So thank you. That's it.
Let's give a hand of applause. That was a kickstart, I would say. Talking about disruption in any aspect, I think the first point you mentioned still closer to where we are, but thinking about that big data will drive the system from cure to prevention. We see some trends of yet, but that already I think will change dramatically the way everyone around healthcare is working and shaping that. But you didn't stop there. You went on to, as you promised, the philosophical part of, will big data, you said, disrupt or just change the way we see us as human beings to the Homo Deus question. So we see how big that is. And I think it gives a sense also that it's the big convergence also of every area and aspect of life which comes together. So great start, I would say. Let's get to our next speaker, which is Dr. Matthias Gottwald. He's the head of R&D policy and networking at the Bayer AG. He's working in that role since 2007, so already for a couple of years, responsible for the interactions with the political environment on R&D related issues, and also on the question of publicly fundings with industry fundings. He's working a lot on an international level, European level, connecting the dots over there and trying to find solutions to bring all the brains and forces together to find solutions for today's challenges. He has a PhD from microbiology from University of Göttingen and worked in several management positions. So also rich experience he's bringing with us, and we are now very much looking forward, Matthias, to your talk. I will do the same sharing if you're fine. Micro against.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your nice introduction. I would like to give you in a couple of minutes overview on what we are doing together. All pharma companies do a lot internally with their own resources on big data, but there is also a need to do more together, and this is what I would like to market here as well. You are all aware of the situation we are all in. Over the last decades, the situation hasn't changed much. It takes on average 13 years from the first idea to bring a new medicine to the market. It is costly. New calculations from Tufts University and others say more than 2 billion per new compound. We have a huge attrition rate if you look about how many compounds disappear over the time. Only few reach the market. And then, in addition, we have the situation, that we now, for a couple of years, have to prove that it's not only safe and reproducible and biochemically working, but that there is also a medical benefit for the patient and for the society, for the healthcare system, and better than the current treatments. So we have this shift from the product mindset to a value mindset, and I think it's a good approach, but it's not easy to manage. And in parallel, we have the situation that 20 years ago, pharma would have done everything inside. We now have, I think, all realized that even with a billion budget of research and development every year, this represents a tiny portion of what is done every year in R&D, biomedical R&D. We at Bayer represent about 1% of what is done every year around us. And so 99% of the wisdom is outside, which makes it very logical that it makes a lot of sense to collaborate. And what we did then, and what we started about 10 years ago, was the Innovative Medicines Initiative, IMI, the biggest public-private partnership in healthcare, where the European Commission invests 2.5 billion so far. We are thinking we will prolong it also and expand cash going to the public partners, the FPA companies, the pharma companies represented by our association FPA, is bringing in their contribution on their own via in-kind contribution, scientists working in the projects. It's all to create big critical mass consortia to work on common challenges we have in R&D, to make the whole process more efficient, more innovative. And this goes from projects from a very early part in research, better understanding of diseases on the molecular level, to translate these findings we have then on the research level into the clinical development, and to see how in a world of precision medicine we can be more efficient in development, but also to have a look at the real life situation, real world evidence generation, all these words you have heard a lot about, how to understand what the patient after the artificial situation in the clinical trials is really then doing in normal life. And to a small degree, the last pillar is co-development of drugs, co-funding of phase 2 and phase 3 trials, even in areas where there are not enough incentives for companies to do it on their own, like antimicrobial resistance, addressing the need for new anti-infectives. Real-world evidence is something we address in several projects. We have now kicked off more than 90 projects, brought together thousands of participants, a lot from the FPA, from the pharma companies, many, many more from the universities, other research institutions, small companies, but also, and I think this is one of the key features of this initiative, patient organizations are in many, many projects, and also other partners like regulators working in the projects directly, because this is a kind of a neutral platform where they don't have a conflict of interest. And I would like to briefly introduce you into a program which we started last year, which is called Big Data for Better Outcomes, BD4BO, under the umbrella of IMI, where we try to identify better approaches, joint approaches, to support the evolution towards a value, outcomes-focused, sustainable healthcare environment, healthcare system in Europe, and to see what big data can help us to go this way. And we have set up a program structure where we have indication-specific projects, like the ones here, on different diseases. I will introduce you into 2 examples a bit closer. And the overall idea is to jointly design sets of standard outcomes and how to demonstrate value in specific disease areas, to then bring the silos together to create huge joint pools of data in a specific area, and then to identify novel analytical methods to deal with these heterogeneous data, and ideally also to link it to device data, mobility tracking, etc. And so in principle, it's about bringing together all these heterogeneous data from electronic health records, clinical data, prescriptions, whatever, omics data, in a pool where we can use them to, or in a network, so not one central database, but a pool of data to help with all the other requirements that are listed here on this slide. And the first example from the area of cardiovascular diseases is a project we started early this year, about 19 million budget we have, and we address atrial fibrillation, heart failure, and acute coronary syndrome. We have brought together a nice pan-European consortium with a couple of big universities, also including colleagues from Sweden. You have yesterday heard about Sweetheart and the database. This is included here as well. And then a couple of pharma companies, the European Society of Cardiology, patient organizations, and together we would like to address various topics, and you will see this then later when you get the slides, so I will not go into any details here, but we try to address questions more from the preclinical field, to compare clinical outcomes from public registries with formally adjusted endpoints, so with clinical trial data. We try to identify heart failures phenotypes so that we can use them better to predict efficacy and safety also in trials, and to create novel approaches for better understanding the patient situation. We have the similar situation in leukemias and lymphomas, where we address a couple of leukemias and lymphomas with a 40 million budget. And this is also a huge network. One of the challenges in this program to then also do project management and coordinate these, but we have learned that it is possible. So here we have more than 50 partners now, a couple of pharma companies here, and patient organizations, but primarily hospitals, big organizations who have already data, big repositories, and try to bring them together to create something novel. We will do that in prostate cancer as well. We are currently in the final phase of writing the full proposal, writing the detailed project plan, a bit smaller project. And we also have seen that there are overarching challenges and issues in this area which shouldn't and don't need to be addressed in each indication area. And so we created a so-called coordination and support action, do it, which deals with the overarching issues, like an overarching program strategy, but also to create a knowledge platform where the aggregated results from the various projects will be at one repository so that everybody can see them and use them, where we try to foster the collaboration between the projects, and also then look at the data privacy issues. And this is one of the challenges we have heard a lot about yesterday as well, that especially in Europe, with a legal, very fragmented framework, it's an issue we need to address. And so what we have started in this project is to develop a template for informed consent to allow more research in future for biobanks, for biomarkers, but also for clinical trial data, to create transparency on the law situation in Europe, because even with the GDPR, it will stay to some degree fragmented, because every country has the right to implement it in a little bit different way. So we have to deal with that. We will try to identify recommendations for everybody in future, how to deal with these legal issues. And we have already started to create a big network with the players, with the data privacy responsible people from the various countries,